We're ready to call the meeting of Shelburne Community School Board to order. First time we've had a meeting in the school. It's in the 4 years that I've been here. That isn't the budget forum, so it's nice to do this. Thanks for everybody for being flexible. The only adjustment to the agenda that I have is that we will have an executive session at the end to discuss administrative structure.
It's on there.
But that says none.
Oh, you're right.
Yes, and this is saying that we will have one. So that's the adjustment. Are there any adjustments? Any other adjustments, anyone? No? So we'll move on to audience and communications, and we have some folks here that are going to speak. I did email you folks and just let you know that we're here to listen and we can discuss to a point, and if we get to a point where we feel we need to task the board or administration with something to decide on in the future, we'll make that decision and we'll meet again in the future. I certainly run these meetings and everyone here agrees with me that we're very low key and we're open to discussions, unlike some board meetings on television. So I'm open to having conversations, but I can't authorize any action at this time because the discussion wasn't warned in that manner. So with that being said, welcome to our meeting, and we're excited to hear what you have to say.
Great. Well, I guess I'll get things started, and this might be easier for this part of it, but my name's Doug Martin.
You just can't stand right there because you're right in front of the camera.
Okay.
There we go.
And so I'll introduce everybody. I'll start with Antoine Williams, and he's going to talk a little bit as well as I am. And we have Karen Stackpole, my wife Barbara Martin, my mother Natalie Martin, a friend of ours, Manuela, who's from Italy. We have Jamie O'Brien. We have Michelle Williams, wife of Antoine. We have Ian McCrae, yes. And John Madden, we'll let him sit with us.
I was so lonely.
So that's the good part of the orange chair.
No, it's all good.
There you go.
And I guess the thing that we all have in common is that we all have children of color in the school. What we're here specifically to address is, I guess, is implementing principles of diversity. How do we get that into the school system? And whether it's at the administrative level, whether it's at the curriculum level, or whether it's the teacher training, is how do we get this into the school system? And we're here, I think, to share some of our stories, because for each of us, our kids have all been targeted one way or another. They've all been mistreated one way or another. And there's not a single incident of this. This is something that's been going on. My kids are now in 5th and 6th grade. It's been something that's going on since they started school here. And I think most of us have kids now in middle school or in 5th grade anyways, who have had some experiences. Some of those will be shared with you today. I'm sure. I know I have the short story I'm going to share. And I guess what we're looking for is the beginning of a conversation. And we have some ideas about some things that maybe the school should be looking at. And I think we're going to present that to you today. But we want to just give you some background. So I'm going to start. And if that's
we'll
okay.
all jump in whenever it's appropriate.
And
That's great.
I guess I'm gonna start with a story about myself, and let me just tell you the reason I'm telling this story is the bottom line is that prejudice is alive and well in Shelburne, Vermont. It's happening. It happens every day. I'm educated. Okay, I have a law degree. I have a master's degree. I went to MIT for undergraduate work. So I come from a nice Jewish family outside in the suburbs of Boston. We preach social justice. That was part of what we had going on. That's my background. I'm married to Barbara, who is from Uganda. And my kids, when you see them, if you saw them, Eli and Emma, they're black. They have all the black features. And nobody's going to confuse them for not being black. And you would think that I would fit this mold where I would be open-minded. Okay? And the fact is, and I guess I'm going to steal my mother's thunder here for a minute. She always tells the story when I was in 7th grade how I had a friend over, and a black friend over. And when the black friend left, I was told, "Did you know that your friend was black?" And I said, "I had no idea. I will check with you tomorrow," because the differences just didn't occur to me. But I can tell you today, I'm not that person. I'm not that person today. If I saw two black men walking down the street towards me, I would have a reaction. I would say, "What's going to happen? Am I safe? Do I have to cross the street? You know, what time of day is it? I would go through this whole process. Even somebody from my background, and I would make decisions. All right? So the point is that here in Shelburne, we all have that. We all harbor these prejudices. We all see the world through this lens where we're viewing people. And no matter, and I'm a relatively low-level person that I see the world with this prejudice. And I'll tell you, I have to deal with this, to me, is real hypocrisy with my family, because here I am, married to the love of my life, and but I still harbor this whole feeling, and I hate that, and I don't want my kids to have that same kind of feeling moving forward. So that's one thing I just wanted to say. Prejudice is alive and well. The other thing I want to do is just tell you a quick story about my son. A couple of years ago, he was, and my son Eli, he's a great kid. He's popular, he's smart, he's athletic, he's got a lot of friends, he does well in school, he's not a troublemaker. He's really what you'd want in a kid. And so this one day in the playground, he's attacked. Guy comes up, strangles him, and he's got to pull him off. They got to pull this kid off, and there's an investigation that's undertaken. And the result of that investigation is that, as far as we know, nothing was really done. They didn't find that this was racially motivated. There was no finding that he was attacked for an improper purpose. Nothing was done. Move forward, about a year. Same kid, in line, in school, getting food, makes a statement to Eli to the effect that you cannot be trusted because you're black. I can't give you a pass number because you're black. And same thing, we get called in, we talk to the administrators, there's a finding that there's no racial animus involved with those statements, and as far as we know, no action was taken. And here's the effect on Eli. Here's what happened. The next summer he goes to soccer camp, and when his first few days there, he's being harassed by the kids at the soccer camp, and because of his color. And we finally get to talk to him. He says he's having a miserable time, come pick me up. And we say, "Well, what's going on?" And he tells us how he's being harassed. And I say, "Why aren't you talking to the coaches at the soccer camp?" And he says, "What's the point? Why am I going to go talk to the soccer coaches? Because at Shelburne Community School, they didn't do anything there. So what's going to make this different?" That's his story. That's what he's taking from his experience here. And that has to change. That's critical for us to change the attitude and what kids are going to bring out of this school moving forward. Part of what we're doing here, and I think other people are going to speak to this, is we are training these kids to act in a global community. And they're not going to be dealing with a Shelburne type person all the time. When I say that, it's, we're whatever, 90-something% white here. They're gonna be dealing with all races from all different areas of the world, probably. We'll see what Trump ends up doing. That's a different story. So they've got to be actors in that environment, and we're not making that available to them at this point. So those are my stories. I just wanted to get you going with that, and I'm going to turn it over.
I'll let you go, I'll jump in.
Okay. I'm Karen Stackpole, and my daughter Claire, I hope that's not her, but it might be. So Claire is a fifth grader, and she has a beautiful dark chocolatey brown, young lady. And I can say that my experience has not been exactly the same in the sense that I think Claire has experienced probably more, I would say less explicit bias. But it still has been some bias, and kids who look at her and will look at her body type, for example, and will call her fat. When in fact, this is a kid who's built like Serena Williams, runs, really well, plays soccer fantastically, but she's not your typical small little girl, small little white girl with blonde hair. She's just not. And we will see that, and she oftentimes, feels very much other. I think we've been very blessed here, actually, at this school with some good responsiveness, including from you. Thank you. I think with some good responsiveness when we may have had issues, which we have felt really good about. I think Claire right now is really blessed in Natalie and Adam's class by having teachers who are willing to invite different viewpoints and have books in the classroom that reflect kids of different colors, which I think is important. But I worry that Claire's situation is unique in Adam and Natalie's class, because we have certainly heard stories about other assignments that have been given to students about issues that might involve either civil rights or race that have been completely not well thought out, that have just been almost silly to the point of, okay, this half of the class is black, this half of the class is white, you guys write a letter to these guys, you guys write a letter to those guys, go. What? So my point is, and I think the concept of global citizenship, that is what we're doing. We're training these kids to go out into the world. We're trying to do that at home. That's what I do for my work in terms of labor and employment law, is trying to teach people to have an understanding of other people's backgrounds and their perspectives and how they work, so that when they go into the workforce, they can act in a way that's responsible with regard to each other and in a way that's cooperative. And I'm not even talking about, big, crazy issues. I'm just talking about really understanding and having some empathy for other individuals. And I do think, particularly in this year, there has been a critical environment of a lot of really difficult conversation with regard to race. Our daughter, we went to a Black Lives Matter, it wasn't a rally, it was a candlelight ceremony down Church Street. And there were people that were probably 35 feet away from us that were yelling horrid things, to the point where I had to stand in a way and look for an exit to think about my child and my child's safety and how I was going to extricate my child from this situation should it get kind of ugly. That's the community globally that we live in here, just even in Vermont. So what I would love to see, and what brought me here, was a hope that that we as parents could be educated as to what school may be doing already to prepare our kids to be in a world where race is an issue that they need to grapple with and that they need to successfully be able to navigate, and what our teachers are learning maybe in terms of training or what perspectives that they're getting, so that they can have curriculums that are really integrated in terms of, for example, showcasing people not just in February, people who are brown, but throughout the year, celebrating. It's a new movie that's coming out about African American women who were at NASA, Hidden Minds or Hidden Figures, that's coming out. So an example of that, of using history and using books that just feature people, not because it's, oh, look, this is a book about slavery, which is kind of the typical thing, or look, this is a book about civil rights, which makes our kids the ones people look at. Oh, really? Is it a book about slavery? Oh, how did you feel about that? Because that's really what happens. So I'd rather see, some greater integration. And again, I feel really blessed right now that Claire's in that spot. But that's because she has some really talented teachers. So I'd love to know, what might be already being done, and are there plans, or are there pieces of curriculum or training that might help us to make sure that our kids are seen as part of a whole and not just that kid, and that they can see themselves in leaders. You know, we're hopefully training all of our kids to be good citizens and good leaders. And you can't see it, you know, if you can't be it unless you can see it. And so I'd like to have our kids be able to see that. I think there are some good beginnings here, some bright spots here. I'd love to learn more. Thank you.
Great job. I mean, I'm going to come in, and I guess after that we'll probably all talk as much. But really, I'm going to speak of the two of them, from the person who's dealt with this just my whole life. And I think that it's important to know that we're in a great community. But the thing that's most important to me is to make sure that we spend a lot of time with our children, but we don't spend the time that the teachers do. So what's really important to me is just to make sure and to help if need be for what kind of training are the teachers getting, because there's implicit biases out there, and we all have them. You know, you see someone, you're playing a game of sports, and you go, do you take the skinnier person or the person who's larger, depending on the sport? We all kind of do these kinds of things. But it's important, I think, for educators, and I know that I've got a lot of clients who are educators, so I know they do it at a lot of levels and on university levels, just to make sure that there's training so that they can at least think about those implicit biases themselves, so that everyone is treated accordingly. I know growing up, I tell my wife, I'm great that I'm lucky I was a great athlete and very academic, but nonetheless, I was the butt of most of the jokes. I also felt like, and I still do at times, that you also you're perceived in a different way. So what's really important to me is to find out what kind of education these teachers are getting, so that they can challenge themselves and the things that are in their minds that they just might not even realize are there, to make sure that they're doing the best they can, so they can treat all these students as the same. You know, I joke and say, you know, we go downtown and most advisors in town can go downtown and no one notices they're there. We go out to Starry Night and it's like, oh, you were Starry Night last night. Oh, which is great. But then also on that same level, you think about in school, these things the teachers need to realize it, because oftentimes the child that looks different is the child that's going to stand out of the crowd. Sure. And that's the child also that's more apt to be seen when there's a problem and there's a group of three. It's easier to identify that person in the group, you know. So for me, I'm just advocating to have the school do as much as they can. Also advocating to you know, I'm a UVM board member, but a big thing I love doing is being part of a diversity committee nationally. We were talking about that. We would love to be able to help this group. This is our community. Shelburne is all of our community. Shelburne Community School is our community, and we'd also like to know what we can do to help out, because some of us have unique situations where we can be helpful, and we know this group is a group that wants to help, but we want to let you know that we want to be there. I mean, there are things that we're thinking about. We're going, are they doing these things? Maybe they are. But if they're not, they may be waiting for us as parents to push things forward, and we're here to say we're willing to be active and to actively help make this school in particular the best school in the state of Vermont. This is where our kids are. This is where our future is. This is where we all live. So it's incumbent upon all of us to do all we can. And in considering the environment we're in right now, luckily, it's unlucky, but luckily that it's bringing up to the forefront a subject that we probably have all thought was gone, which isn't. I laughed. I say to my wife, the irony about what just happened in our presidential election is there are a group of people that, I'll say it, there's a group of people who are racist and sexist, but they know they are. And then that's maybe 50%. There's also a group that's 25%, which is those of us that are minorities or are married to, in a relationship to, who really get to see the things that are still happening. And what just happened on the positive side for the rest of the people who are open-minded, liberal, or conservative, but open-minded, they realize that we still have a lot of work to do. And I think that we're here to say we're willing to help. We can no longer be passive with these things, because passivity will allow those that work the hardest to get their agenda put forth. I mean, I'd like to think this might be the first time that there might be this kind of a group, and this is not new to Shelburne. So I'm thinking to myself, it's we want to do what we can. It's partially our fault, but we want to make sure that we help out and make sure that the Shelburne Community School does what they can to uphold all they can for our children. And on a lot of levels, it's inclusion training, it's helping us help our children deal with what's going on in the world, in their classes, because idealistically, you want to say that we're colorblind, but as an African American, I want to say when you teach someone that it's colorblind, it downplays it. What we want it to be is it's we're color accepting. When someone I've heard that all the time. Oh, but Antoine, you're different. I'm like, well, when you say I'm different, what you just did was you pushed me from African American, and now you're going, but you're different. But I'm not different. This is who I am. So these are, I use that as an expression because I'm going, we just want to know if there's help. We want to help out, and we want this to be active. I don't know. There's probably a lot of, and in this group, I don't know how much you want us to say, but we all have stories. I mean, what was disheartening for me in particular, and I know my wife and I, but I think that most everyone here, is to hear that we've all had stories with our children that were treated in a certain way. And we've had situations where one parent was on the other side of it and got treated a certain way, and another one of us were like, wait a second, my kid was on the other side of that and they got treated. So we just want to make sure that our kids aren't being treated harsher than they should. And again, that's where some of the implicit biases can come in, where someone might have a harsher treatment to someone versus someone else. And again, we can give you tons of stories, but I wanted to mention that, saying we're not here. We're here because we care, but we're also here because a lot of us have already dealt with things, and our kids are the eldest one in our group. We're talking fifth graders. We're not talking about we're not fifth, sixth graders. We're not talking about CVU yet. We're talking about these are kids who already are dealing with things in third, fourth, fifth, and sixth grade, and it's alarming, and it's one that we need to say, okay, we need to make sure that we're all doing what we can.
Yeah, I think I appreciate the storylines that you just told. I think you've told three very separate forms of stories, and you've had specific events that have happened. You have questions about, what can we do in our curriculum? What are we doing in our curriculum? And, we're possibly doing some things. But then the other thing is you're volunteering and helping to consult. Because I know, that would be a very touchy subject to me. It, almost like you said, we want to do some inclusion training. Let's go straight to Antoine and ask him. Well, that could be an assumption there. But, you've come here and you've said, maybe we can be included in this because maybe folks, like you said, we think we're saying it's colorblind, but that's not really the case. It's color awareness. That's a great term. I love that. I have to be honest. I feel like I just came out of Red Ribbon Week and I went to Madeline and I was like, is that bullying and harassment, or is that? And she's like, no, Dad, that's drugs. So, and maybe there is a week where we have bullying and awareness, but
Not just a week, though.
it's not just a week, right?
Right, right.
Thank you.
And probably why I mentioned when we talked about some training is at the end of the day, those that are tending for our children are the educators. So at the end of the day, if there isn't any kind of inclusion training for them, then everything beneath it is kind of a moot point.
Just to give you
So that's something that.
Yeah, just to give a
Because you
basic
do that.
example too, is that, so for instance, I think as teachers, and again, I fall into this category too in terms of the work that I do, as you choose examples, you say to the kids, you give the kids a signal, as to who's in power and who's not in power as you choose to do that. And so when you are choosing, let's say we're doing famous Vermonters or something like that, and we're doing, okay, we want the kids to each be a famous Vermonter. The conscious choice, for example, by a teacher to say, I'm going to have famous Vermonters or people that you can look up to who happen to be of all different ilks. Maybe we pick an Abenaki person. Maybe we pick, or another Native American person. Maybe we pick the first African American to graduate from college in the United States who went to Middlebury. Maybe we pick, instead of, and I'm not going to use proper names, but people who've started companies that, make cool things you ride on. I'm just saying, there's lots of different ways that you send messages to kids, and some of them are wickedly subtle. So it's not just saying to a child, don't use the N-word. That, I'm hoping, would be more obvious than not. but really it's about the more subtle messages that we're sending to kids and making sure that we are giving kids of color opportunities to be in leadership just like we're giving other kids, making sure that when we're calling on kids. I taught at the law school level, and I remember getting training at the law school level about the fact that women were called on less in class. And so we were taught as professors, make a conscious effort to think about the egalitarian nature of how you are including kids in class. It's really subtle stuff sometimes too. And this is not rocket science. There's lots written about this. So there's lots of pedagogy on all of these things. And I'm sure we probably are doing some of that, but I don't know enough about it. So and I would love to know if we are doing some of those things, because I think it really is important. And I think that that will help kids, not just our own kids, but the other children, see our kids as not just, oh, we're talking about that part of that part of the Constitution, because I came in the other day to talk about that, where it's 3/5 of a person was counted if they were not a free person, if they were a person of color. Zink. And then you're looking at somebody of color. Okay. So instead, let's have that academic conversation and not just have it, pointed at one person. And I think it can be done. And I think it will prepare our kids well to go into the world, conscious of race, but not in a bad way. And again, you can't be it unless you can see it. And we send messages to kids all the time. You are sitting at this table, or you're not. So.
And I would just add as a little thing. And the good thing also, when you talk about training, because it's not about the teachers, it's also the little kids, because we can't control the parents. And as my husband said, there is biasness. It's there. Even our neighbors, whoever it is. But you can't control the parents. But here in the school as they come in, I think just appreciating the awareness, it's out there, because they're the ones who are going to be out there in the world in 15, 20 years. How do you deal with that person? If you're a manager, how do you manage that person? They're not any different from you. We're in the 21st century in the US. But, you can't, it's hard to control everybody, but even at the little level, what are some of the programs? And I like the idea that we are actually really into it. And I even came up with an idea today driving here. I'm like, whoa, I have a program, like we can maybe volunteer based, reading to these kids, bringing up these, these people. They could be Chinese, but just appreciating that culture and richness, because that's what it's about. But at that level, lower level for the kids, because kids really, such things stick here. Recently they have been having that disability theme, and that's something the kids are like, oh, you can't believe it, and doesn't matter what age, it's stuck here. So when that kid tomorrow meets somebody who is, disabled or needs help, it's here. And I can see it with my kids. I would imagine that's the case with other kids. So such touching moments, not just as you said, a week, no. This is a day-to-day, because as we go out, it's the reality. Mm-hmm. And if we don't start here with the little kids, it's going to be that one person helps another, and then to get better.
Yeah, and I think I feel like there's a good opportunity here, because you're not coming here saying, I want an orchestra, I want AP calculus. You're talking about something that can be the part of almost any curriculum that we have, where you have a, I just went to the middle school conference, where any sort of development of an argument or use of evidence to come to a point, it doesn't matter if you're writing a literary piece or doing a science experiment or writing a social studies paper, something like color awareness and respect for others and overall empathy and being a good, kind human can be worked into that at every turn, and it's not like it's impossible to do if we did some work on it.
And I can give you a concrete example of that. So in my daughter's class, they just had a section on the Abenaki, and they learned some great things. They know some of the important foods and some dances and some of the religion religious aspects of their beliefs. But, they didn't get into, well, what's happened the last 50 years or 100 years, and the land's been taken away, and the whole creating a nation, being recognized as a tribe. None of that kind of conversation was had. So the curriculum's there, but a real opportunity was lost. And so that's the kind of thing that we're talking about being evaluated. So some of the stuff, you're absolutely right. It's there, and it's not a major addition. It's not a big cost, but it's somebody reviewing whether there are other lost opportunities like that can be incorporated. And and we've talked about this, but you have a great thing on handicap people, disabilities, and expanding that into a much bigger project, inclusionary, project about race and color and ethnicity and all that. But that should be limited to, a week of the year or a certain month. That's something that you can keep teaching as part of the curriculum. And
I think the Kathy.
I was going to ask, can you tell me more about the diversity committee that you talked about? This is an existing committee? Is it in?
Oh no, but I was just talking about. So I'm on the UVM board,
Yeah.
and part of it is we have a group that's a diversity committee, which is just a committee to say what can we do. So oftentimes we're on other committees, but it would be the same as saying, you know what, if one of the guys of your board is to say, we want more inclusion, just as far as I'm concerned, just by the fact that someone like us is in your group, whenever the conversation comes up, it's going to be a different thought process. The amount of meetings I've been in, I'm like, wait a minute, we got this huge dollar figure, right? We got this huge dollar figure for this building. Did we make anyone aware that in addition to it going to the medical school, that there's also a checkbox where someone can say that this can go to a scholarship for a minority? That person might have wanted to do that, but if we don't even think that way, it's up. I wrote a $5 million check. I would have given $50,000 to that. I would have given $1 million of the 5. But unless you think that way, and part of my job, part of being in a committee like that is it allows someone to make, it would be like, the same thing as if you're in a group of guys and a woman comes to the group, she might say, by the way, what you're doing, I'm glad I'm in the group. Great idea, but we might want to do this. So that diversity committee really is a subset of some members, but in there, one of our big things is to help inspire inclusion, which is partly recruiting more people in the Alumni Association board to do things. So it's kind of almost like what we've done here, which is we've got a group of people. The next step probably would be, and the onus might be upon you as much as it is upon us, is to get more diversity amongst your group.
Or also providing a resource.
Or providing a resource, exactly.
Providing a resource for you. So for instance, if there's, I know that with an intentional group of parents of interracial families, we have reading lists, that we send around to each other. Then when I walked into Natalie and Adam's class, I saw some of the favorite books that we've used with Claire since we were little kids. Since she was a little kid, that had really great, characters in them that just happened to be Black. They weren't, it wasn't like, ooh, this is a story about this particular. It was like, hey, here's a story, and look, the protagonist is Black, or one of the characters. So just things like that. If we can provide a resource for the board or for teachers or things like that, because you got some educated people on here too who might have connections in doing those kinds of things. I think I'd be willing to help. I don't want to speak for everybody sitting here, but
and it's such subtle things. It's a subtle thing. It's like. I don't remember, Michelle, what was it? How early was it that children recognized that if they had the option of black and white? Yeah. At 3 years old, a doll's already there. They're already saying if you can pick which one of these dolls is good, which one is bad. Okay. At 3 years old, societally, they've already recognized.
The black kids at 3 were picking the white doll because she was good.
So even
I
little,
think you probably read this.
Yeah, right? So even little things like that is that's the kind of thing that if we were to walk into a room and there weren't any of those books, we might say, or if someone said, whatever it may be. I just think it's more of a we're here to help.
Yeah, and really, really basic things like I mentioned that famous Vermonters thing, not at this school but at a previous school that Claire attended. They were doing a project. They were doing a Kwanzaa celebration, so they were really actually trying to celebrate African Americans. and they were handing out names of the parents of people were scream out during the celebration. They were like Beyonce, Michael Jordan. It was so stereotypical. It was beyond ridiculous.
Yeah, right.
And so I said, actually, I'm going to yell out Ursula Burns. And I had a bunch of teachers who were like, well, who's that? I was like, she's the head of Xerox. She's the first African American to ever be the CEO of a Fortune 500. I don't know, I'm just thinking, I'll throw that one out. And, the concept of that, we should be thinking that way to make sure that our kids, can see it.
Right.
And so if we can help as a resource, we're happy to do it.
I think that's great. I mean, what's very powerful for me about this whole thing, I mean, the term that I might use for this is it's very easy, to live in a town like Shelburne and be, it's more color clueless than it is color blind, and things like that. You're just like, how is that not appropriate to look up to Serena Williams? And, it is appropriate to look up to Serena Williams, but, that's, again, beside the point. I think, one of the things that would be powerful from my standpoint would be for you guys to address your kids' direct experiences to the teaching community, because, and again, it's not entirely my place to say that's what we have to do or should do, but I think most teachers share the color cluelessness of most of us, and don't, the best intentions do not lead out to the outcomes that we're looking for. And so just say, hey, here's how my kid is experiencing, this classroom is experiencing these things, and these are the outcomes. So that, the story about Eli, again, is very powerful, and I think, in many ways, we live in a school that, by and large, I hope that the experiences are very positive around here, but very obviously not exclusively so. Nor are they for, any kid in middle school or any other thing. But, needless to say, given the complexity factors around race, we want to be, particularly, given last week's outcomes, we want to be much more, I think, attentive and proactive in terms of how we, try and address these issues. So, I'm very appreciative of your guys spending your time and sharing your experience, and also volunteering to see what we can do to, make this a better experience for, not just for your kids, for all of our kids as we navigate a much more diverse world, even in lily white Vermont, so.
And I think it's incumbent upon us to have a greater awareness. I mean,
Yeah.
I think so many of us are at fault to just go along our merry way, and if we're not feeling it personally, we just don't see it. And okay, well, here we go,
Yeah.
But until we do experience it personally or through friends or whatever, then it comes home and we feel it strongly.
And I think the timing is really appropriate as I grew up and went to school here in the 70s, and, we had one family of color in the that was it through my whole, grade school and I believe high school. And now, you just look around town and see what's going on. I mean, it'd be interesting to know, what the numbers are. I mean, this school is much, much more diverse, even in the last 5 years, than it was, when I started on the board. So I think, your timing is good, and as a board and as a school, I think you're spot on.
Yeah, I think I've heard a lot of good stuff. We have some good comments here, and one of my thoughts is maybe we could convene after the start of the year. It's the middle of November. We have a lot to do over the next few weeks. Maybe we could meet in the new year in the first couple weeks and talk about, share between you and between the administration and the board, and talk about what things we do have, what things you think we don't have, what things we could have,
Yep.
And even, very, very specific, no direction whatsoever here with this statement, but even your comment, Antoine, about, well, maybe when teachers are given options for professional development, maybe we don't have that checkbox on there that they could use. So investigating to see if such a thing might be around.
And maybe it shouldn't be a checkbox.
Yeah.
Because once it's a checkbox, it's now optional,
Right.
versus something that most.
Well, just saying a
Elaine
way
has-
for teachers to go out and get that professional development.
And
But
one
yeah.
of the things that we
Let-
may be able to bring too is the ability to give you some resources even right here in the area, because Burlington City Schools, Winooski City Schools, there are a lot of schools, even at EVM, there's lots of programs that we could hook you up with, people from whom you could get more information.
And even at a statewide level, this isn't just right here.
Right.
Several weeks ago, the Vermont Superintendents Association and the Vermont School Boards Association held their annual conference. And the keynote and the theme of the conference was implicit bias.
Right.
And so there were two people from Ohio State University where they're doing major research on this. Everyone was captivated. I'm on the trustees for the Superintendents Association, and we're following up with that in our spring conference again, because everybody there was really captivated by the message. So it's true, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And there are respectful ways to acknowledge differences, and then there are ways that are intended to be respectful and come out tone deaf. So that's part of all of our need to learn.
So I would offer to take inputs and develop an agenda, and then work and have a meeting at some point in January.
That'd be great.
And would that be reasonable? You guys
Yeah.
folks are good with that?
Definitely.
That'd be
Thank
good?
you very much.
Okay, thanks very much for
Thank
coming.
you.
Thank
Really,
you
thanks
very
for your
much for
time.
coming. Thank you.
Absolutely. You don't want to hear about agenda item. What about John's presentation?
You're welcome. Thanks for coming.
Say hi to Maria
Thanks a lot, guys.
and Claire.
I'm sure. Don't worry about your chairs. Don't worry.
No,
It's not the band concert.
That's right.
See you, Doc.
good night. Thank
Thanks.
you.
Ian.
Don't slip on your way out, Angela. It's slippery out there.
You are well trained. I love it. You are well trained.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Growing up with for the next 4 years.
Yeah.
And what they're gonna have to deal with.
I know. And it's tough because the arc of this presentation is well in advance of last week.
Exactly.
And you don't want people to be naysayers and concentrate on, oh, we're just complaining about that. But you're right, we have to advance it. So,
Great.
with that,
Great.
we move on to 4.1, presentations, and we have my good friend and neighbor, AKA Neighbor John, John Madden, who's here to talk to us about math. And are we going to talk a little bit about algebra?
We will.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I think it's been 3 years since I've talked to the board. And
That's wow. Is it been
To
that?
make sure that the board are the smartest people in the community about what we have here in the schools.
Yeah.
so, and I think it's a good time to have this discussion because things have changed, I think, in the 3 years. Is it okay if I just sit here? Is that
Yeah, totally.
I'll just move over here so you guys can see everything.
That's okay. I can.
got it.
get up there.
Drive to
That's all right. John. So I thought, just to start with, that I think our focus now is right there, and I think what I want to do is talk to you about how we're shifting our programmatic use and developing our own curriculum now. You know, we brought on Common Core aligned programs, Bridges and CMP3, 5 years ago now? 3 to 5 years ago. There was a slight implementation time, but and over that time we've gotten used to teaching in a different way, and content that's a little more rigorous, and teaching in a different way because of the work we did around. So you could go to the next slide. This is what I'm going to talk about. So we're going to talk about transferable skills. You just saw that slide, and then how we differentiate, and then curriculum and programs. So you can go to the next one. Thanks, Patty. So you've seen this before. I've shared it with you. You see it in every classroom in the district because the district invested a lot of money in getting all teachers to understand how to best teach mathematics. And that was really the lesson to me was we teach habits. We don't teach math. We want to teach kids how to be mathematicians. And if we teach them how to engage in those habits of mind and interaction, they by definition are mathematicians. And I think the tie-in here is that those are the transferable skills. They're not solely mathematical. You know, when you're critiquing and debating, you know, and just to look at some of the interactions, the critique and debate, and to compare our logic and ideas and explore multiple pathways. I mean, that's what we have to do in our world of information-rich society. You know, we have to be able to weigh things and decide for ourselves what's the best course of action. Bucky last night at the band concert was saying, I don't stand in the front of the room and tell them what to do anymore. We have a limited amount of time. Here's where you are in your practice and with your piece. Where do you want to spend your time? So it's, again, back on the kids. And so we're all teaching these transferable skills that are mandatory for life these days.
Can become critical thinking.
That's how we become critical thinkers.
Problem
We
solvers.
analyze, we problem solve, we do all those things on the first 5 leaves, and really 3 of those leaves are right there in those habits of mind and interaction.
Are you going to talk about taking away, making sense?
Yeah, so that's
I thought that was
interesting.
pretty
This
interesting.
the teachers development group, the group that did this professional development with our district, they're rearranging this again. They change it every few years because they're always working on. They're taking away that top thing of making sense because, so imagine that's gone, because when you're doing those other habits of mind and interaction, that's what you're doing. You're making sense of mathematics. You're making sense of the world. And that's what we really want to teach our kids to do, is be thinkers. So you can go to the next one. So in the math classroom, really that's what we're trying to do, is coach. My job as a math coach and coordinator is really to work with teachers on how do we get kids to engage in these habits? How do we turn them into thinkers and mathematicians, not computers? You know, in the old days, we were all taught to compute. That's how we were taught math. Here's the process, here's how you multiply, now memorize it and apply it and it'll be a test Friday. That doesn't matter anymore. We all have calculators in our pockets, right? And so we need thinkers, and coaching teachers on how to teach kids those habits is basically my job. And if we get kids engaging in those habits, the curriculum and the content is differentiated by nature. Kids can take it to very different levels, and it's the same topic. And that's what we really want to do, is we want to get kids that will tell you you know, I know how to do this. We want them to say, I know how to do this, and I'm curious about this. Because I know how to do this, here's what I'm curious about. Here's how I'm going to take it deeper myself. So then teaching other kids on the other end of the spectrum that are struggling to learn, what habits are going to help you? Well, you need to know how to model and picture and visualize and see things. So teaching kids how to engage in the habits is differentiation by nature. It's kind of a beautiful thing, actually. We want engaging tasks, and we're going to get to that, and back pocket questions. And those are things that are engaging tasks we want for everyone, not the middle of the road kids in our room, not the high flyers or the low flyers as we used to call them, and I hope we don't do that anymore. We want engaging tasks for everyone, and we want those tasks to make kids engage in the habits that will help them be critical thinkers, critical, problem solvers, collaborative, all those things those transferable skills. When they engage in those things are happening. Differentiation has happened. Back pocket questions, those are great to have, and you'll hear teachers talk about that sometimes. And that's a way to coach habits. So when a kid is done and they're supposed to finish this task, and you see them, they're done, you can say, so have you thought about this? Have you thought about what questions do you have? And if they're stumped, you can coach them in how can you ask, what's the next question to ask here? And you might have one to share with them. Well, if that works for that, will it work all the time when you do that? To give them something to chew on, right? And get their brain thinking. We have intervention that happens mostly in K-5. We're doing a little pilot in 6-8 right now, and those interventionists are in the classroom almost all the time now. Rarely do we pull kids out of class. It does happen. Sometimes in-class intervention is not getting kids to the standards that we want. They're not proficient in certain areas, so we'll have small groups, or we'll pull out to the Kiva and do some work. But for the most part, our interventionists are in classrooms doing their work in the regular classroom and assisting not just 1 or 2 students, but 20.
Are those paras or?
They're highly trained, what's the?
They're specialists.
Specialists, paraspecialists. So
So these
and
are
they're-
folks that spend all their day on math intervention.
So we have 2 that do all day math intervention, 2 for lit, and we have 1 that splits her time, math and lit.
Okay.
So our Bridges program, that's the K-5 math program, and really when we started it, we said, okay, everyone has to teach bridges for an hour a day, and then there's this number corner component, that's another 20 minutes a day, and there's a lot to it. So have at it, let's see how it goes. And everyone try to do it with fidelity so we can all assess the program, right? And so we're beyond that now, because what we've learned is it's more like a menu. You know, the bridges lessons are like a step-by-step, here's what you should do, but not always are they great. You know, a lot of them are really good, and we love the program, but we think of the program as more of a framework. Like in K, they need to get these standards, and here's the lessons that you can use to do it. But we look at it differently, I think, now as a little more sophisticated in how we teach. We might say, not everyone needs this lesson or this lesson, so we're skipping those. And we're going to spend more of our time here, and actually we might augment that with something because we don't think it goes deep enough. And so we use it as more of a menu.
Because of our formative assessment.
Yeah, because we're constantly assessing kids, and the way we teach allows us to assess, because we give a task, and we don't call on raised hands. We say everyone works privately, then you're going to talk about it together. We're going to make them talk, structure that interaction so that we can hear what they're saying. And there's our assessment. It's like ongoing formative assessment, because you get to hear them, you get to see their work, and then you can make a decision. Okay, what's the next question I need to ask to move the thinking forward? So here's the 8th grade portion I talked about. In middle school, math really is standards based. You know, Alan and the Tarrant Institute and our consultants, Bill Rich, and you know the coaches from CVU, Stan and Emily, and Jeff Badillo helping with jump rope, and everyone's moving toward this standards-based era in 6-8. That's not quite the case at K-5. We've always been semi-standards based, but really in middle school, students are all engaging in standards-based learning. And to that end, we used to have this 8th grade final that was a CVU final, and we don't even give a final anymore, and guess what? Neither does CVU. Because you're assessing all year long, and as you go, you're assessing standards, and you have so much assessment data. By the time the year's up, there's no need for a final. And quite honestly, the decision's made in January anyway, so the final was sort of just one last hoop. But
is there a summative assessment?
There are summative assessments for every unit. Okay. There's not a cumulative summative for the year anymore.
Okay.
And we're following CVU's lead on this basically. They don't give finals in algebra anymore. They basically say they'll get to the end of the year and have all this assessment data, right? And then they'll say, you didn't achieve the standard. You haven't shown proficiency on these 3 things. Here's some tools to work on those 3 things. We're going to assess those. That's your final.
Wish I could go back to school.
That makes so much sense.
Bob,
Makes so
come
much
on
more
back.
sense
We'll take you
now.
back anytime.
boy.
I think you'd thrive here.
I'm sure you would.
So there is no cumulative final, but all kids are exposed to the 8th grade and Algebra 1 curriculum. And every student in this building has a chance to have placement credit at CVU. That's no different than it's been for years now.
That's if they show an interest in going into algebra. Is that the way that works? Or
So
what?
actually, everyone gets the same content.
Okay.
Okay, so they're taught, everyone is exposed to the same content, and then they have an assessment that if they show proficiency at all the items on that assessment, they've shown proficiency for Algebra 1 also. They go to the next unit, same thing. So teachers are tracking, are they proficient in all the items for Algebra 1?
Mm-hmm.
They're also assessing 8th grade math at the same time. You know, so basically kids have the shot, everyone does it, showing proficiency on everything, 8th grade math and Algebra 1.
So it's not segmented out.
No.
They're not. The kids can't say I'm doing algebra.
No.
It's
We have
all
nope.
integrated.
We have 8th grade math,
Right.
and everyone, and so the beauty of that is if they show proficiency, great, they get to go to geometry at CVU.
Mm-hmm.
They can get to AP Calc as a senior. Not the only route to AP Calc, but certainly a 1 course per year easier route.
And if I could just jump in.
Please
with
do.
some data. When I first got here back like 11 years ago, the data around the percentage of kids that qualified for geometry at CVU was like probably around 30% of the kids. And the last time I looked at the data, I think 2 years ago, we were at 57%. So doing it this way has made a huge difference because we didn't pre-select. You know, because when we do it that way, it's parents who select mostly.
Yeah.
When you're talking about 8th grade kids, It's the parents who are saying, no, you need to go this track.
Yeah.
So,
And I think to add on to that, Elaine, I would also argue that our more rigorous curriculum, starting in kindergarten,
oh, yeah.
and the way we
absolutely.
teach, produces better thinkers. And I think that might also impact those numbers. I would argue that.
Sure, yeah. That's how we got into the math program that we got into.
Yeah.
The professional development because of that.
Yeah. So I think that's it. Any questions or?
John, isn't there still a test along the way when you reach a certain?
Yeah.
What are those milestones? Is that?
So usually a unit, the end of a unit, and typically we're talking 4 weeks.
No, but I mean in terms of, I thought to get out of 6th grade or 7th grade or 8th grade, you had to complete a certain computation. I can't.
Oh, so there are some computation tests where we teach very conceptually. We want deep critical thinkers, but we also want kids to be able to compute also. We're not throwing that out. We're just getting at it a different way. So there are computation tests, but they don't hold you back from a grade or hold you out of a class. It's just that more attention will be spent on that piece of mathematics, and so those kids might get some intervention. We have some 8th graders coming down first thing in the morning to the math center 5 days a week to get a little help on like dividing multi-digit numbers using the standard algorithm. And we don't just teach them the algorithm. We'll teach them what division means and how it looks mathematically in an area model, and then we'll get to that computation piece, and they'll get there. And that's been the case already this year for some kids.
But that's something they need to complete by 8th grade.
There are no hard lines.
There's no
that
hard
say
lines.
You have to do that. We will just do everything in our power to get everyone to those standards, and knowing that remediation might need to happen at times.
You know what's different today is that those kids that might not have a particular concept or a skill, when they get to CVU, they're still going to work on those. It's not going to be like, okay, now you went here and it's a whole new program, and too bad if you don't get this and you're not understanding this next thing. It's going to transition right to CVU.
It's woven.
Follows you.
It follows you. There's no
gotta
leaving
learn.
out.
That's
make
the
them
beauty,
learn it
right? That's standards-based learning in a nutshell. Is that you're not done until you actually understand the material, and it's
you really
true
want
at
them to
K-
learn it, huh?
It's true at K5 too. We don't give up.
We don't give up.
Yeah.
And you know, the other thing I think conceptually is that we don't really care if they learn it in the September to June framework or if they learn it in the summer framework. So there's stuff that we're doing, especially at CVU, around the summertime to make sure that they can, like you said, maybe in those summative assessments that they've done, there are like 2 or 3 components of an Algebra 1, a Geometry, and Algebra 2 class that a kid didn't get. There's ways to get that over the summer so that when the fall starts, they can now track into the next class. Compared to how it was when I was in school. If you didn't get it by the end of the course, guess what you did? You took the whole course over again, even if you only needed like 30% of it. So,
Yeah, it's the old factory model.
Yeah.
Very different era.
very different. Much better.
Much better.
Much better.
You're here.
John, just as one plus, would you talk about math circles for a second? And
Sure.
just what you've got going?
Exactly what I was.
So this is all Wormser's fault. Let me just say that to start with.
mine.
It was your idea. You sent me an email last year and you said, "Hey, have you heard about these math circles?" I'm like, "No." One Google search later, and I'm learning about math circles, and really, it's a cool idea where math circles are meant. Usually, they happen outside of school. People have them in their homes, and they've gained a lot of national popularity for people who like math. And they're really a nice extension. And so what I did is reached out to my friend Chris Danforth, who runs the Computational Story Lab at UVM and is a serious mathematician. And we've had 3 or 4 of them now. 2 this
last
year.
year, right?
2, maybe 2 last year. So I think we've had 4 of them now where and they're gaining a little popularity. And we even had 7 or 8 middle school kids, including some 8th graders at our last one. So it's open to 4th through 8th graders, and it's this wild mix. And our last one, we were in the art room. He said, "We need a place we can get messy." Signed out the art room. We made oobleck in speakers.
That's cool.
Okay, so this is, Google it, because it's really cool. If you make oobleck, you know the properties of oobleck. It's baking soda and water, and if you touch it, it gets hard. If you leave it alone, it's soft. So when you apply energy to that through a speaker, it's wild what happens. Google it. There's your bedtime Google
Or
tonight.
just go to Chris Danforth on Twitter.
You could go
Oh,
there
see
too.
there.
He's got a movie of it.
Yeah.
Oh, he does?
There's a bunch of movies online of it. It's really wild. And so we had him do that, and then we talked about the applications. I mean, think about that. And what are the applications of something in our world we would need where if you apply pressure to it, it hardens and protects. But otherwise, it's soft and malleable.
Renowned skis.
Yes, exactly.
That's right.
Exactly
Cool.
right.
Shin guards, or maybe, I don't
Shin
know,
guards.
maybe you want to prevent
Helmets.
a wheel from traveling
Helmets.
too far.
Dave Connery, helmets.
Helmets.
No, that'll never work.
A wheel from traveling. And, protective gear for sports,
Yeah.
cars. Who
Cars,
knows?
I was gonna say.
Kind of cool
Cars.
to think about. So.
I use that as a great metaphor. So sometimes when you're with people and they're having trouble getting along or whatever it is, I go, like, it's less like oobleck. If you pound at it and you're going like this, you cannot get your hand through it. But if you just put your finger on it, it just goes right straight through. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like it is a metaphor for life and how we are. So it's got lots of applications. There's the science application and there's the philosophical.
Right.
Did you have a math circle last week?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You did. Was that open to everybody?
It's
again?
open to 4th through 8th graders. Hopefully you guys are getting the emails. Alan's sending them out to 4th through 8th grade students.
Yeah.
And then a day or two later, we're sending it out to 4th grade parents, right? Isn't that how we did it? Yeah.
And does it happen during school, before?
It's
or
after. It's just for an hour after school. And we're going to have another one, maybe December. We're going to try for one a month and see how it goes.
That's great. I mean, that for me is always the thing. It's like, how do we take a subject that historically everyone thinks, ooh, geeks like that thing, and give it some cachet, get it exciting, all that stuff. And math circles, I think, are great. Danforth was crazy who who's...
You just add him to the mix.
Absolutely. You're
And all of a sudden
like, wait, are you the guy from Back to the Future? You are, aren't you? And, and other things like, Lego robotics. I mean, all my best efforts to get my kids like super fired up on this stuff, it sort of works. But, again, the more efforts we can do, the more kids realize, wow, I get beyond doing the worksheets, because so often kids don't understand, and I think coding has elements of that in there too. So, coding has all the core principles of math. It's all logical thinking. All right, why did this cool thing I was trying to make break? And then you realize, oh, my logic little, history puzzle is failing right in this spot. And those are, such great learning opportunities. They're very sort of mathematical minded. And again, there's cachet because all you need to do is haul up, the Zuckerbergs of the world and all those guys. And that's where the X factor is these days for a lot of those kids. So that might be another interesting area. I also try and get like Steve, the app coder guy. Can we get him to do some work with, let's teach apps or let's teach any of those things. And that's, from my standpoint, in terms of where the board can help, usually from where the board can help, although no longer, is figuring out a way to get some additional cash to fund some of these after school things. Because at the end of the day, some of them take money anyway. So, huge amounts, but, if there's ways that we can support as a board to get a guy, Danforth, we're not obviously paying him to get rich, but, if there are people who can come in on a more consistent basis to help drive that, that's an area where we as a board, whether it's through a PTO or whether it's through other ways, I think we can help drive that stuff. So, who knows? Yeah.
Cool.
Appreciate the support.
Yeah. Thanks for coming in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank
Go
you,
man,
John.
go.
You're welcome.
Go man, go.
So, reassemble.
Bye, John.
So we'll move to 5.1, our principals report, and want to welcome back our K-5 principal.
Thank you very much.
We missed you while you were gone, and we're glad you're back. And
Lefty Beaumont.
Yeah.
yeah. And anything we can do to continue to provide any help in recovery, just let us know.
Thanks.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Yep. So we'll start with the principal's report.
I gotta find it.
Okay. It's all right.
Do you have it up?
No, I don't have it up. I'm getting there.
Peter doesn't want to work. Do you have a hard cup? Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I am really sorry. I completely forgot to make copies. My fault.
It's in there.
We're supposed to read it
Yeah.
beforehand anyhow.
I know, but I
That's our
usually do try
homework.
to. I know, but I usually do try to provide you with copies. So I apologize for that. So anyway, first one, congratulations to our MTSSB team. So you recall from last year, we talked a lot about our multi-tiered system of support on the behavioral side that we've been working on. Quite a bit at Shelburne Community School this year, the end of last year and then this year. And it is, now we can actually reveal that it is our Positive Behavioral and Interventions and Supports, which is PBIS, which you've probably heard of. Happens in a lot of other schools. I'm happy to say that that team in our state actually decided to rename their PBIS to MTSSB because they thought that that made a lot more sense. So we were on the cutting edge of renaming PBIS in the state of Vermont. So I thought that was pretty cool. And there's a picture there of our two school counselors, Rachel Petraska and Katie Tyler, and our new behavioral intervention coach, Brett Devanere, and they are getting the PBIS School of Distinction Award after having gone to Lake Maury at one of the PBIS trainings and workshops that was held down there. So I thought that was pretty cool. And feed, we've done a lot with feed this year. Actually, today we had a kale chip taste test. It was delicious. I felt bad because we had only made so many batches of it, and 4th, 5th graders went in, and the kids were tasting them, and they just loved them. They were really good. I mean, I have to say, Becky did a really good job. I don't know if you saw the kale plants out here, but they were crazy. They were like, I think they were like 8 foot tall, weren't they? I mean, they were so tall. I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know it grew that high. But anyway, she made this great batch. Unfortunately, they could only have one serving, so they were all like, come on, can we have more than one chip? Because, one kale chip is not much. Of course, at the end, we had some left over, so I felt bad that 4th and 5th didn't get as many as they wanted. So I said to her, we need to make another batch for those guys. But anyway, but they've been doing some great things. We made homemade salsa with the harvest from the garden. And it's so great to watch middle school and elementary school kids working together. I mean, I think there were 2 teams who came in. They worked with a 3rd grade, a 5th grade, and a kindergarten, I believe it was. And just Natalie Watson actually had said something to Alan and I about just they're cutting vegetables together. It's not really that different. I don't know, something that you would do normally, you would think. And yet, a lot of these kids don't ever do anything like that. So here they are, they're cutting up these vegetables, and something that would have taken 4 hours for Becky to do, they did in 40 minutes. And so, they just felt so excited to think that they had reduced her workload, by 3 hours and 20 minutes, and they were just thrilled. So anyway, I thought that was pretty cool.
And just contributing to the meal,
Absolutely.
Doing real work.
Absolutely. And this, actually, the salsa test that they did, they were comparing kind of bought and or purchased salsa to the salsa that they had, and which one did they like best. And of course the homemade salsa came out on top. So.
Although I did hear that some of the kids chose the
They did.
the
It was like
bottom
30%. We had the results here. I get 83%. 83 to 60.
A lot of people still like
but
log
some people
to
like
log
that stuff. So I don't know. Do you want to
Sure.
do the get out the vote?
So you may be aware there was a Get Out the Vote competition sponsored by Shelburne Charlotte Rotary. So we actually tied at 79% in terms of voter participation with Charlotte. So
pretty cool.
Yeah, we'll both be getting checks tomorrow morning, Charlotte and Shelburne, for $500 from the Rotary for voter participation.
Good job.
And then they also sponsored a Get Out the Vote poster contest, and so just the winners are shown there. I mean, it was actually a nice way to approach the selection. I think that was really, honestly, very difficult for a lot of educators to navigate, both pre and post election. Yep. The one thing I would say is, consistently across the team, what I appreciate at the middle school level, they approached it from the issues. Let's talk about the issues of the election, and avoided the let's do a school-wide vote of Trump versus Clinton, and staying away from that, knowing that just, it may have worked in the past, but this election, it was not really a wise route to go. So, yeah.
And then on the next page, just some professional development. So as you might know, we have Dave Melnick coming from NFI, the Northeast Family Institute, and he is a consultant for us this year. He's talking on what it means to be a trauma-informed school, so we've worked pretty hard with him. He comes in, he does a whole school event. He's done 3 now, and actually the one that he did yesterday was, I thought it was pretty powerful. He was basically getting us into small groups to talk about individual kids, kids obviously who have some kind of a difficulty, and what we can do about it is in our teams, and then extending it, across grades so that we would have multiple perspectives in those smaller groups. But one teacher really, it really is impacted by kiddos who experience trauma and have some pretty significant issues, and he's kind of stopped what he was doing, the trajectory he was on, and just really talked about what it means to take care of yourself as teachers. And during this time, how difficult it can be for so many people after the election, whatever, and just really, thinking about what do we do to take care of ourselves and what can we do to take care of ourselves. So I just appreciated the fact that obviously a really dynamite speaker who was able to read the crowd and understand how important it was to have that conversation.
Yeah. And the other professional development piece we share is thanks to the Tarrant Foundation. We were able to take 12 teachers down to Washington, D.C. That was about 2 weekends ago. That's ASCD's Educational Leadership Conference. We took down 3 of our coaches, Jeff Badillo, John, and Jensa went down, as long as special educators and members of each of the 3 teams and a unified arts teacher. And really affirming in a lot of ways. It was exciting to sit amongst thought leaders in the country and realize, wow, we're doing some of the very things that they're talking about, the innovative schools around the country, and then some things for us to aspire to at the same time. It was really one of those nice balances of, all right, we're on the right flight path. We've still got a lot of work to do. Probably the biggest takeaway was we went down to learn about project-based learning. And as I'm watching John's presentation and we talk about not having a final exam, one of the things that we're really talking about is how can project-based learning permeate that so that, A, we're integrating these subjects so that math is connected with social studies and science and language arts, and presenting the kids with genuine learning experiences where they can demonstrate their learning throughout, and that really becomes, quote, the final exam, and just the engagement of that. And we came away recognizing we play with it. There are times we're spot on, but then there's times we're way far away from that ideal. But really got tied in with some great resources. We continue to just be so thankful we got Tarrant Institute guiding our work, because we can turn around and say, hey, that's the group we want. There's an institute out of California called the Buck Institute, and they are the nationwide thought leaders on project-based learning. And they're like, yeah, we'll get them for your institute this summer. If that's what you want to be doing, we'll get them for you. So that's where we're headed next.
And school enrollment. So we are down a little bit from where we were, but from October to November, as you can see, we come up a bit by 8 students. So
I was confused why the numbers didn't add up, because they're all going down, but we show an up here in 745. So just as this table gets added up, some of the columns are K to 8 and some are triple E to 8 on this final one.
I see.
So it's just, if you could just go back and
I'll
the
go back
data's
and
right,
redo
just the
it.
summing for the total is off.
Of
So
course, yeah.
just go through and check that table
Okay, we'll do.
so that it's
Thank you.
they all are adding the same numbers, because I was like, wait, how does -2 equal +7? So, but
And that will be the conundrum we'll study in project-based learning.
yeah, that's right. That's right.
That's
What was-
what happens actually when you cut and paste. So my apologies.
No, the biggest problem was taking a PDF of text values and turning it into an Excel file with column separated variables, and then
Somewhere in the HTML code.
yeah, that's right.
Fix that right now.
Okay, so 5.11 budget process update. I assume at this point in time you've both had meetings with Jeff and with Elaine and Megan about staffing for curriculum and budgets, and so all your inputs are into the CVSD board.
Yep, inputs are in. We had a meeting with the entire CSSU kind of brain trust there. Everybody.
We're doing it the way we do. We're modeling it after the way we do service planning. So we just took that process and went, why don't we do that?
Mm-hmm.
So the whole group of us met with each administrative team, and we had a list of things we're looking for. What are your class sizes? What's the ratio? What's your enrollment projection? What are the other additional supports that you have within the classroom? Which ones are professional? Which ones are para? What are the other programs that you have in your school? And I just met with somebody today who's going to help me develop a spreadsheet that is going to track all of that, that hopefully, the plan is, when you get to the bottom, there will be some way to input the information so that you can see if there's equity across the schools and where the differences are. And so to the board, the CVSD board, we're saying, we're going to share those numbers as they are. We don't know how it's going to come out because the schools are different and we value that. Let's say that there is some wild variation between one school and another. We're saying to that board, we're not making any changes in this year. But we will have a plan to make sure that it's equitable across, in the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
So equity is a huge value of the CVSD board, and the other really big value is that our schools are unique, and we want to maintain that. We're not looking to have cookie-cutter schools and say every school will be the same, but we need to figure out how we track equity and allowing for uniqueness on the same spreadsheet. So that's what we're working on.
Right.
So are those numbers all fed up into the budget that we got last night?
Yes.
They are, okay.
Yep.
All right. So Bob gave us a draft budget last night, and it was a hard copy, and I didn't bring it today.
I was walking around with a stack of
I
extra
know, I
ones
asked him
until
to send me the file so that you guys can all see it.
There's
and I
no
will-
reason why you can't. I mean, certainly tonight I can send it or,
Yeah, Bob said he would send it to me.
okay.
Yeah, so he just didn't have it at his fingertips, so in the next day, I'll send all of you that
What do the
copy.
percentages look like?
Well, so if you took all of last year's budgets and you added them up, which we had this long conversation that it's not really a consolidated budget, that number is 71.9 million. If you do the work that these folks have done and you roll everything up and you add in all the baseline assumptions of 5% on fuel and all that stuff, it's 75 million across the whole SU. So you're going from 72 to 75.
So it's like 6%, is that?
Yeah.
Doing my math quickly in my head.
I think that
doesn't
was
include
4.8.
that doesn't include the money that we get from special ed. Right now, this is just the budgeted amount. We're not looking at the money that we put in.
Right.
So it's
And-
kind of like where we typically start every year then, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
Okay,
Right.
so
There's
difference.
It's
no
only the
difference.
first. It's only the first cut.
Yeah.
We
And
will
our
be
first,
looking at it.
so our first CVSD budget meeting, those Tuesday morning meetings, those will begin December 6th. So we meet twice in December and twice in January.
One of those meetings will be right here. I'm not sure which one, but we
Right.
are moving around the whole SU
Yeah.
in these meetings.
Do you have budget buddies like we had last time, or any kind of community
They've talked about
input?
that. They
Yeah.
will.
Yeah. So the budget committee is working on
You and
it.
I should talk about that, Dave.
Yeah.
Put it down.
I don't explicitly know what we're going to do with budget buddies at this time,
Yeah,
but
just
it's
wondered.
probably a good idea.
Yeah, yeah. And people have mentioned it.
Well,
Yeah.
especially based upon the program we had last night at CSSU and community involvement and
Yeah.
communication,
Yeah,
I would think that it would be a good idea.
right.
Is that something that?
Especially since we-
Yeah. No, go
That
ahead.
was one of the tenants in the
Yeah.
vote, that we would continue to have budget buddies.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
No, and everybody has,
Hey,
That might be a good
everybody
idea
has
then.
given
let's keep it
tacit.
around at least this year.
That was in the discussion, it wasn't in the articles.
All right,
No.
No, Tim, really honestly, that is something we want to do. You know
Yeah,
what it is?
totally.
It's amazing how adding one other board just complicates
No, no, I
everything.
get it.
Oh,
And people are
yes.
confused about which meeting is this and
Oh, I
what are we
know.
planning for? Because this new board has the really important work to do this year. And they have 3 very important committees that are sandwiched in. So I think that it's really one of those pieces that kind of like,
Oh, yeah, it just fell through the cracks.
Yeah.
but the intention of everyone sitting around there and the intention of administration is that, yes, we will have budget buddies.
Yeah,
For sure.
that was something that was basically SU wide.
Yes,
previously.
every
Yeah.
school.
Yeah, yeah.
Right, yep. No,
Yep.
sounds good.
Okay. So CVSD debrief, we've been meeting as a negotiations committee, we've been meeting as a budget committee. The budget is obviously moving along. Eric Beal is the chair of the budget committee, which I think is a good idea, not just because I nominated him to be the chair, but I think he's got some challenging ideas, and I think it's good for him to ask all those questions, and it has nothing to do with why Bob retired.
It doesn't.
No, it doesn't, but
But Eric
sometimes-
Beals asks a lot
yeah,
of questions.
Yeah, he does ask a lot of questions, which is good.
Yeah.
Negotiations committee, Russ is cranking on that. If you want to learn more about that, we can discuss it in another venue. Some of the details there. We are starting to look into events for communications, just trying to get more information out there. I don't know, am I missing anything? It's pretty much the meat of the work. CSSU debrief yesterday.
We had the audit.
Well,
Let me ask, sorry, one quick question on CSSU is with regard to the budget. So the tax incentives do positively impact the budget for
Yeah,
the
10
coming-
cents.
Yeah, 10 cents.
When
which
we get
is-
down to the bottom of this, you see your tax rate, and then you see minus 10 cents.
Yeah, which is, so that will be, even regardless of the budget, that's going to have a very positive impact on
So
the
it's
overall.
10 cents this year, 8, 6,
Yep,
4, and
exactly,
2.
yep, exactly. So that'll be nice.
Yep.
Good. All right, in any case, sorry.
So we were presented the audit,
right.
right? But we tabled the vote on that.
So you should add, instead, actually, we should have done this at the front end of the agenda. You should eliminate 7.1, accept independent audit, and replace it with appoint an audit committee member.
Okay,
Right.
that's a good, yeah. We already have one, so,
You have, who is it?
I encouraged Bob to do it.
Bob
Oh,
Finn.
so he's,
So-
Oh, good.
All
Bob
right.
Finn's in for it.
See what happens when you leave early?
Right.
No, but
I would just ask you to still make the motion, take
Yep.
the action.
We can do that.
I'll let Bob
Yeah.
know.
And then we had a presentation
Right.
about
Yeah.
communities and
Community
communication.
connections and how do you connect with your, I thought it was really good. I've got lots of notes and I haven't had time today to sift through them again and to like categorize, but I thought Val Gardner is who did the presentation, and I thought there was some really good ideas there for how we structure meetings, how we, communication isn't just about feeding information. It's about how do you let the public know that you are interested in what they think about particular things and focusing your energies around particular things, not just in general, what do you think about how we're doing? So,
But it was also communications with administration, with teachers,
yep,
with parents, the whole shoot and match, not just the
yep.
community
I thought
that
it
may
was
be
very good.
disengaged from the school. So it was, yeah.
We had a little group thing, small group exercise where everybody was talking, and Mark McDermott told me that he had a meeting with all staff members at Charlotte, just him.
He did?
Yeah. I was
Whole
like,
lane.
I was amazed. I was like, wow. Surprising.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, I just got Mark in trouble, but.
No.
No, I just thought he knows many of them, and so he just wanted to go in and answer questions and get concerns. It was kind of a
Yeah.
novel thing. So,
Well, you
You
guys
gonna
have
do
done,
that?
this board has done this before.
yeah.
Actually, when I first came to CSSU, I think that on a pretty regular basis, Grant Bush would meet with the faculty and
Yeah.
say, how's it going?
Yeah. So, move on to 5.4, first quarter FMR. We did look at,
Revenue down, expenses up.
yeah, yeah. There was the principal payment, or the added interest that hit earlier than expected. revenues are up, so even looking at the 165 that we would apply to the fund balance, we're still behind by 97. So,
That seemed like a huge number on interest, though. I mean,
yeah, I mean, that, it's,
no, but I mean, but I mean, we don't get taxed on the night, or pay interest until we draw, right? I mean, we already accumulated $200,000 in interest payments over,
Kind of like college loans.
yeah, but still, I mean, you look at, I mean, how much have we spent?
Yeah, I mean, was it a
Couple
line of
million?
credit or was it like a, I should know this, obviously.
Huh.
But,
We
but,
can,
you know, if it was
I mean,
a,
it just seems
I
like,
didn't think to ask Bob about that, but do you know the answer to this question? That does seem like a lot.
but if you take, so what, I mean, we're not even, at this
So
point,
the
we're
interest
not
cost, though, but
even-
you had the vote in March?
March.
In March, so it still would be interest just from
Right,
March.
and maybe
Mm-hmm.
we're up to 3 million at this point?
Of expenditures.
Yeah,
Right,
so I mean, you take
Approaching
that doesn't, yeah, I'll
3
ask,
million.
I'll make a
and
note
what's-
to ask.
What's our rate? We get a good rate?
Should have gotten
you're
a good
saying
rate for
it's not
schools.
like an amortized interest schedule where you're paying down more interest initially than,
No, I know, but even if you take 3 million at 4%, over a 12-month period, it's only $120,000.
no, but aren't you starting to pay 9 million over 20 years?
No, we haven't even borrowed them, we haven't taken the draws on the 9 million, I don't think. We don't borrow
You don't
it.
get, if we did get all that money up front, we would be able to invest all that
Right,
money up front,
exactly.
and then
Get a
we
zero
would.
return.
and we,
Yeah,
well,
right.
yeah,
Close to.
right.
0.001%.
But I think we only
I
pay
mean, when you're
we
talking
draw.
about
I
that
think it's
much
like a line of
money-
I
credit.
think so, I think it is.
That's the
So
question,
I
yeah.
will follow up, and we'll make sure that I get back to Dave and he can get
No
back to
wonder
you
Bob's
guys.
retiring.
I'm
He's-
sure
he's,
it's right.
No, don't say that, don't say that. That's not true.
No,
That's
shh,
not
we're on
what
No,
I'm
public
saying.
TV.
I'm kidding
Yeah.
entirely.
So, okay.
Okay, I've
All
got
right.
that.
Facilities? 5.5?
So,
Have some
Yeah.
pictures there, or that's something else, or?
I do have some things. I didn't know, I know you're going to go into executive session at the end if you want to. I'm happy to take you on a tour, and I'll wait for you if you want, up to you.
We should
We can
definitely
take-
do a tour
We
and
can do
then
the
go
tour
back.
before.
Yeah.
The tour is awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah,
let's,
I mean,
let's
I'm
do the
happy-
tour before the executive
Yeah, I'm
session.
happy
Yeah.
to walk you through, and then this will make a whole lot more sense,
Yeah.
because this is kind of just, you know, every time we kind of bait folks if they'll come to PTO, we'll take them for a tour.
Yeah,
So this is kind of the tour paperwork of going through. You know, I think the positive news is we're on schedule and we're on budget, so.
good news.
yeah,
Great, yeah.
Things are going
Are we
well.
on budget or under budget? We were under budget last time, I
Actually,
think.
under.
Under.
Yeah, although we're gonna come back to you in a couple weeks and talk to you about fire alarms and those
Yeah,
kind of
that's good.
things, that we've got some
Kitchen
change
room.
orders that we'll be talking about,
Good.
so. But
Great.
we're definitely have the opportunities to look at some of the things that when we went from 11 to 9, we had to eliminate from the scope.
Mhm.
And so, that's what we're talking about.
Great. We've
Yeah.
got walls and all that sort of exciting stuff.
Oh,
down
I
there?
can show you classrooms.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
exciting, super
Nice.
exciting.
So, yeah,
Very nice.
so probably, let's save that report till I can walk you through and
All
show you
right.
what we
Okay.
got.
Good.
Yep, sounds good.
So, move on to 6.0 discussion matters, and 6.1 board's corner. Does anyone have any topics on offer?
I should really, I did email on the solar project.
Okay.
And my main contact apparently left the company, so he said talk to the other dude, and I have not finalized that piece yet, but
Okay.
I feel like that would be an appreciate or a good one, so.
I think we can
We'll
team
follow
up
up.
with a little bit of solar news
Yeah,
too, so.
exactly.
Yeah, I was
Solar
gonna say,
tracker
didn't I
stuff.
read that we were getting a solar panel? We won one?
Yeah.
It's a 7.3 there. We're gonna
7.3,
move-
we'll talk.
No, it's
Talk
exciting,
about
so that would be a great
Yeah,
one.
so that would be
a great one.
good.
Let's
Good
do that.
article.
Are we gonna, just as an aside on discussion matters, are we gonna do something nice for Bob? Come the end of
Oh,
the year?
absolutely. We're gonna do something big.
Good.
Whatever the heck Colleen Tag got,
TV.
I just
You
wanna
wanna
know.
up that?
Yeah.
We're gonna need to
No.
up from whatever
No,
Colleen.
we will have an It's All About Bob
Good.
celebration.
All right, fair enough.
Maybe a
Fair
roast?
Oh, that too.
Fair enough, fair
I
enough.
bet there will be multiple occasions.
Okay. I do think in the future we'll probably have to have a short article on 2017 Shelburne board elections. I sent you into an email.
Yeah, what's that all about?
No,
So
I
you're-
didn't get one.
So
Today you sent one?
Yeah. Oh, I noticed the email was Gmail. Are you
Remember,
using
this was
Gmail
a-
or are you using AOL?
This was a discussion. I think Elaine, you walked us through it at some point.
Well, I mean, I
So-
do have Gmail. I can go look.
So your 2 terms
Oh, I got one.
expire in March of 2017. However, the Shelburne board still needs to continue operationally to approve the audit for the current fiscal year. Is
Yeah,
that right?
because you're the board that put the budget together for this particular year, so
Yeah.
you are responsible for the whole shebang,
Yeah.
which includes then the subsequent audit,
Yeah.
which will be in November of 2017. So we need to have a functional board in place to do that item of business.
Yeah.
So
It's-
one meeting?
So it's a very limited requirement.
Yeah.
And there's 2 things we could do. We could just have the seats be open and then the remaining board members appoint new members, and I would recommend we appoint you too. Or you could just be on the ballot and run, and you would, again, have to meet once or twice into 17, 18. So,
It might
Well,
be
there-
confusing to
well,
the
so wait.
public.
so that's why we would write a.
That's what
Right.
I thought. I thought it would be very confusing
Yeah.
to the public to have other people running now for a
Right.
board that's,
But this is
Supposed to
one
be gone
election,
away.
this would be one election in 17, and there's no CVSD election at the same time.
yeah,
But
but it's
still.
still.
I
It's
mean,
obvious
they
people
voted
don't know
for
what they
the
vote for anyway,
CVSD
right?
board.
It's that
What's
much
that?
is
It
true.
could be.
What?
So just to be
Nothing.
clear, though, there will be board meetings in March, April, May.
That's fine.
Okay, I just want to say,
I'm-
and
I'm
then
just
after
joking
that,
today.
Yeah.
there'll be one at some point in the fall when the audits come out.
And you've said you're gonna be a board member until the building's done, so. You told me
Yeah.
that.
I did? Okay. I'm with you.
How's that?
Good.
So I suggest that we do open seats and the board appoint, if that's up for discussion and vote. I don't know how you want to handle it.
Okay.
I think that that's an individual decision that
Oh.
you guys are making. I
Oh,
don't
yeah?
think the board can vote and tell
Yeah.
you what to do. I mean,
Yeah.
I just,
Okay.
So if you guys wanna get
if you want to
50
run,
signatures,
you can do that.
go
If
ahead
you
and do it.
don't,
If
and then
not,
they will have the responsibility if no one is running to appoint, because
I
we
think the only
did check this
concern
out.
would be if someone stages a write-in campaign.
Yeah,
Not
and
that,
then-
not that we're saying no one else can run for those seats
No,
by
no.
any stretch,
It
but
would,
it's,
it would be silly, though.
yeah, right, that's the only
It
thing.
really would be silly, especially after the March town meeting. You know, already, you can tell that the agendas are light.
Right.
They're only gonna get lighter.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as the other board ratchets up, these boards are ratcheting down, so.
I'd say we just get our signatures.
Yeah, I
Put it
think
on the
that
ballot.
feels like
So
the
is that what
easiest
you want
path.
to do? We'll
I mean,
get signatures?
I
Yeah.
think that makes more sense.
'Cause you have to
By
get-
what date?
they have to be in by the end of
February.
January.
Yeah.
So just do a heads up in like middle of December, hit up town hall for
Yep,
a
Of
petition.
a sheet, yeah. And how many signatures we?
50,
It's 50? I thought it was
50 or 30?
30.
30? I
30.
can't remember.
30 was the number I had in my head.
Yeah,
Oh,
I think
yeah,
it's 30.
I can't remember.
On extra credit, go for 50.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, so I will write a board's corner and help confuse the public on that when
All
it
right.
comes up. So we move to 6-2, which is the Long Meadow property. And the last time we met, this family had asked us for a movement of the access so that they could do their work on their property. You guys all had concerns on what exactly is going on. Are we sure about this? Are we sure about that? So a couple things happened in the last month. Number one, Bob and I went to the planning commission, or it's the development review board, asked if there was an open request in for this. There is not. We went and toured the property and looked at the layout of how the road could be versus their plan, and also based on the changes to the property that have happened where they put a bunch of fill in, so the right-of-way they're proposing would go up a hill and then back down. Bob said if we did build in that area, going up and down might be a little more risky than you would need it to be. So he had a little idea. So we came up with this plan where we said the school would formally consider a boundary adjustment of the right-of-way to accommodate the Roberts' interests with the following stipulations. All legal and surveying costs associated with this accommodation we paid for or reimbursed by the Roberts. The Roberts are granted DRB approval for the project, and instead of the new right-of-way being routed up the hill and down, the school requests that it be level as it is today. And there's a map we can show you about how that is. But the basic premise here is that a request would go into the DRB for the project, and we would agree to the change of the right-of-way once the project, as laid out in the DRB, is approved.
It's approved.
And this is the whole, oh sure, this avoids any sort of confusion as to approving a vague project and then finding out that
It's
it's a
something else.
gas
Yeah,
pipeline running
right,
through
yeah.
Shelburne and we let them do it.
Right.
So, so that's the tack that we're gonna take.
Mhm. And for them to pay or reimburse all of the costs is, makes a lot of sense.
But I mean, we're giving them something of value so they can, as I understand it, develop their property more densely than they could today, given the right-of-way.
Right.
So why are we giving that away for free?
Well, we're moving property that we own, and, you know, we're moving on to property they own, and we're giving them the property that we own in a very small
I
square
guess I would have to
footage.
see it on the map to see. Do we have a map?
We do have a map. It was in the last packet, and I can go through it with you.
But it was unclear. I mean, we had the last packet at the last meeting. I thought it was
Yeah.
pretty unclear.
Um,
And that's what I thought we were coming back with.
Right.
Some more detail and specifically what they're doing.
Right. So what they want to do is they want to add another line of storage sheds along the line that they already have. The problem is the next one will come into our right of way.
Yeah, they don't have enough land to
Right,
develop
yeah,
what they
there
want
you
to
go.
do.
But they own the property on the other side. So we have this strip of land that we bought for access to the school property. So the problem is, they said, well, why don't we move the whole thing over like this? And the problem only really exists at the very back, or at the very back of the property. So instead of moving the whole thing over, we'd like to keep the existing right of way and then excavate and move it over. You know, and so
Well, I mean,
we're going back
exactly.
onto
I mean, in
their right-
concept, I get it, but I
Yeah, right.
just
No, the principle
don't
is
understand why we would give something of value to a private enterprise so they can more densely
right.
But
No.
develop their
But I guess,
land.
but I guess
What do we want
my,
it for?
but
Well, I think that the principle is value is
it-
getting created, and let's get a piece of the action to some, crass degree. At the end of the day, it's, we are.
they're giving us adjacent property
Yeah,
in
right.
return.
No, I get the
So,
principle.
I
I get the
we
principle
hold the
each
keys
way.
to the kingdom.
Right. That is the issue. It's a little bit of.
But-
in,
I guess, but do we need to get paid for it?
I mean, why, if somebody else came along and said, we want to build storage buildings on your land, will you give us the land? We would probably say no. So why are we going to give these people a little piece of the land?
Yep. Right. Exactly. And even if they are saying, I'll give you, you've got undevelopable land, I'll give you this other undevelopable piece, even though I'm going to, gain value out of extending my.
I just think we need a,
Yeah, I think
clearer
there's.
understanding exactly what it is. 'Cause
I think
I
we're.
think that's a little vague.
So it is vague. It is vague because there's no delineated request to the Development Review Board. So once they create this request, then we can decide if we agree to it or not. But we're not going.
According to that, it doesn't sound like that. It doesn't sound like once we hear from the DRB, then we can go ahead. We're saying that they've got to have a plan and then la 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 la.
And then we'll
It doesn't
consider it.
have a stipulation in there, I think, is what
It
Tim is
sounds to me
saying.
like if DRB approves their project, then
It's a
we've just
deal.
given them the land, is that correct? Or we've traded the land or whatever the,
If the DRB approves the project, part of that will include our agreement to move the right of way.
but I guess, are we committing to that up front?
That's what it sounds like with this,
If the project is approved,
yes.
Then we
Yeah.
are.
How many square
But
feet
so
are
we're
we actually?
committing,
right.
again, my point is, we're committing to something that we don't know what it is. So I think what they need to do is create the plan that they were gonna present to the DRB, bring it back to us where we can look and say, okay, this is where it is now, this is what it's gonna be, and then we can make a judgment. Is
Yeah.
that a good deal for the,
yeah, so rather than waiting for just the DRB approval and then saying, okay, we agree to this, seeing the plan beforehand before it goes into the DRB
and
and
then we,
agreeing to that, you know,
yeah, I mean, I think. we
I
need
would,
to-
Well,
I
hold
agree
on,
with that. No, go ahead.
because they can bring a plan to the DRB, but then they can change it a number of times. So I don't think, it sounds like, and I think Tim makes a lot of sense, that they need to have an approved DRB plan before we'll agree to considering any change in the land.
right.
I think we
Right?
probably want
Right.
2 stages. We want initial review before you go to the DRB, and then, obviously pending final sign off once the DRB
And once they
approves.
get it approved,
Yeah,
then we'll
exactly.
give them either the yay or the nay.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's true. I mean, again, we don't want to. I don't think we want to sign our life away either way. But we want to be actively.
We can go to the DRB meetings, those are open and public meetings when they present,
Yeah.
and see what they're presenting.
But I mean, our charge is to protect
Schools'
the
interests.
financial interest of the school, not to make it easy for a developer
Right.
to build more extra storage space.
Yep. Yep. At the end of the day, absolutely.
It's nice to be a nice neighbor, but
All right. So, this is just a discussion matter, we don't need to act on it, but,
Okay.
so step 1 is to be included in the initial plan, and, step 2 would be to agree to transfer only after approval by the DRB. Commensurate with the
Yeah.
thing matching the initial plan.
And approval by us.
right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, action matters. Our new action 7.1 is, we're not going to accept the independent audit. We're going to appoint one member of our board to, be part of the audit committee, which will do that. So could I get a motion to, appoint Bob Finn to the audit committee?
So move. Second, go ahead.
Okay, moved by Tim, seconded by Kathy. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. 7.2 personnel, leave of absence request. This was the request to go off of paid FMLA to unpaid FMLA.
Correct.
You guys are good with this?
Yes.
We're good
Okay.
with this, supported 100%.
So get a motion to approve the leave of absence request.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved by Matt and seconded by Kathy. Any further discussion?
Mm-mm.
None? All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion carries. 7.3, could I get a motion to tentatively accept the solar tracker gift?
So moved.
Second.
Second, okay, discussion?
Want some background?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I heard you got
So,
something.
yes, so we were, Devon Moore and the cross-country team spearheaded our school's participation in what's called the Way to Go Challenge. Statewide competition where students tracked how they got to school, with the goal being to increase walking, biking, or riding buses to school, and kind of track that. We were already good, but we went from about 50% to those targeted weeks about 70%. And because we were above 50%, we got entered in a competition with a grand prize being an all-earth solar tracker, and got the call about 3 weeks ago that said, hey, we randomly picked you and you win.
That's
And
pretty great.
Yeah.
That's
so
a substantial value.
about a $30,000 value.
Yeah, I was going to say.
So
Yeah.
What goes along with it? What are the responsibilities on our end for this?
So responsibilities on our end will be, we're responsible for any internal connections of it. They will handle the installation. We've identified a location at the end of D-Wing, kind of with inside, kind of the walkway there, so it's visible but doesn't interfere with any of the playing fields, doesn't interfere with the playground. We're investigating some other schools that we may want to put some fencing around it, other schools that, we have some elementary schools that have them, that haven't fenced them and don't feel that it's a problem. Chris and I are kind of looking at that. And we'll be responsible for running conduit to tie it into our meter.
What size is it?
It's a physically, I believe it's 13 by 13, and when it lays flat at night, it's about 12 feet in the air. So it's a good size one, yeah. And we'll tie right into our meter. We've had to do some back and forth work with Novus just to make sure that it in no way violates it. That's why this is tentative. Bob Mason is still working through, just kind of the contract that makes sure that they're comfortable with it. They verbally signed off on it and said, yes, this is fine. He's working through what the contract will be. So that's the final piece that needs to be sure.
Is it in front of any windows where it is going? I mean,
Not directly,
No.
So it will
it's-
be once those windows get punched through.
You'll be able to see it out those two classrooms, but
It
it's
certainly
up
wouldn't,
and,
yeah, it wouldn't
yeah.
be directly in front, it wouldn't be blocking sun.
no.
Because you want it far enough away from the building so that,
That
you know,
you
it's
don't have
clear.
shade
Move,
on it.
right.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, so they're planning a big awards ceremony. This is a statewide competition. We're just one of several entities that won prizes in it. They would like to do it here on Wednesday, December 7th. We're talking about combining that with a special Walking Wednesday, thinking that might kind of fit the spirit of it. Encourage folks to meet at the green, walk down here, have a ceremony here in the morning. Yay,
Great.
congratulations. And they're hoping to have it installed by that time.
Wow.
So it would be kind of part of the situation.
how
Yeah.
much will it produce for us?
It's
An
five-
offset,
It's a 500 kilowatt offset, and, as Chris said, it's not gonna be a tremendous offset. We're probably talking the daily electricity of 2, maybe 3 classrooms. But over the space of a year, that's still, $300-400 that we paid nothing for, and it gets a good visible presence of our solar. I think that's where we tie it in is,
Right.
let's advertise the Novus at the same time we have this presence of the tracker. Those two really are a nice story to tell.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Along with national awards, along with all the other stuff.
Right.
obviously.
So, even with the running the conduit and acceptance of the panel, you think we should accept this? It's,
I think yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I think.
the numbers aren't ridiculously outside our material.
$125
Okay.
on conduit.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. Okay. So, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Great. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Okay.
Seconded.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, carries. And, our next meeting is February 21st in CVU, at CVU. Our next budget meeting for CVSD is December 6th in Charlotte if you want to attend. So, and we will take a quick tour.
Yep.
And then we'll meet for, yeah.
So when you were suggesting a January meeting with this group here, was that what you were thinking too?
That's what I was thinking too.
Are you thinking that it will be the regular board meeting?
I
It
don't,
can be, I mean, but I want to know, make
What
sure
is the
that I
meeting
track it.
for in January?
Well,
For the
you
diversity
suggested that you
group.
would,
Oh.
right?
Come
And
together.
there would be a presentation by administration, or,
Probably our guidance
I
counselor.
was
Oh,
thinking, yeah,
I didn't hear that.
yeah, you said
Okay.
you'd share what
it
the
was
school is
my
doing.
idea. I was speaking. You weren't listening. You were like, Dave's not, it's just Dave talking.
For the chorus.
I didn't catch a January
So I think it's
meeting.
fine
Okay.
that it can be the same meeting, we'll put it on the agenda, or, I just want to make sure I've got it right so that I put it on the work plan where it belongs.
And we're all informed of it. It would be
Yeah.
a Tuesday
'Cause
night, like a
Your
normal
next
one?
meeting is not till February.
Yeah, so I was
Yeah.
thinking it would be a separate meeting, a special meeting that we would hold. Would all of you want to be there? Would
Sure.
3 of you want to be there so that you would, okay, so we would warn it and we'll have to just pick a date
Yeah.
that
Okay.
works for everyone.
So we'll-
I almost wonder if we do want to warn it. I mean, I think
You
there'd
have to
probably be
warn
You
it.
have to,
We
if
have
more than
to.
3 of us to get together.
That's the thing is, if there's enough of us here, we do need to warn it, but the question is, it sounded like the goal was really more one of dialogue than
Yes.
one where we're there to be policy making. And so,
Right.
I do think we want presentations from,
It doesn't have to be this setup.
right. No, I
Right,
think
you know what I
that's
mean? It can
fine.
be a more informal discussion,
I wonder
but-
if we want to take a lead on who wants to talk to. I mean, I know Antoine, not great, but well enough. I know Doug reasonably well. I know,
Karen pretty well.
yeah, I know Jamie who was there. I know,
Were
so.
you guys even here when I was talking?
You're going to take the lead on this. Were you talking at some
Did
point?
you
You
hear
were
me
taking a
say
little
it?
sleep.
You heard me, I was like, what the heck?
But who are you going to,
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and facilitate an agenda between all 3 parties. Us,
Okay.
the Antoine and Doug and
Yeah,
friends, and the administration. And that's what I'll.
He's doing it all. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
And
got
you,
you.
yeah,
With you the whole way.
you had it the whole time. I mean,
I don't really listen to him either.
that's okay. That's okay.
Tim says
So-
something, I perk up. But
So I just want to see if I can work together some ideas through multiple emails with
great.
3 people
Yeah,
to get an
no,
agenda
great.
going, and then we'll have a meeting in January.
All
Is
right.
that cool?
We're ready.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Patty.